Hello, my name is Pablo Crespo. I'm the content director at Energy Dialogues, and today we are speaking with Reg Manhas, CEO of Lapis Carbon Solutions, one of the companies helping shape the carbon capture landscape and a corporate partner of the upcoming Carbon Solutions Forum taking place in February 18th and 19th in La Jolla. Our goal today is simple. We want to give you a preview of the ideas, priorities, and real project work that will drive the conversation at the forum in February. Hello, Reg. We are very excited to have you with us and look forward to hearing your perspective.
Yeah, Pablo, thanks for the welcome. Looking forward to the conversation and looking forward to the conference in February.
Great. Let's jump right in. Lapis is a full service bespoke CCUS partner. As decarbonization pressures grow across sectors, where do you see demand accelerating fastest, and how is your customized model helping projects move from ambition to execution?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, I think that the foundation of Lapis really has been on the kind of the low cost solution, and that really began with ammonia. And our first project in El Dorado, Arkansas, is an ammonia project that we're decarbonizing. But as the company has progressed, we've now moved into other areas beyond ammonia, really focusing on the biofuel space. Ethanol is certainly an area where there's active growth going on. I think between the 45Q and other incentives in the biofuel sector, we're seeing a lot of activity, a lot of interest in that area. So our customized model allows us to pursue those projects that might not be viable for other operators. We customize our not just our commercial options and storage solutions, but also the way we approach landowner engagement, stakeholder relationships, and that's been very valuable in the ethanol biofuel space in the Midwest, where there have been significant stakeholder issues in the past. And our approach of really working at the ground level upwards has really opened a lot of doors for Lapis in that use space.
Yeah, thanks. That's great to set up the context, and we'll get into biofuels later. You are advancing projects across different types of emitters and geographies in the U.S. What have these early deployments taught you about integrating CCS into existing facilities?
Yeah, we've learned a lot of lessons, again, harkening back to our flagship project. I tell people it will always be our most important project, which is the El Dorado LSV facility, the ammonia plant. That's been an example of the two companies working together, moving through this process. It's a new industry, new technology, new regulatory process. I tell people it's not just a commercial partnership with LSB, it's a strategic relationship. We're not just a service provider to LSB, but we're a partner with them as we move through the ups and downs of the timelines and just understanding this industry together. So really working with the emitter and the commercial partner to elevate that relationship to one that's more strategic is very, very important. It's certainly been a key thing for success with LSB. I think from a commercial standpoint, economic standpoint, proximity really matters. I think that pipeline costs tend to be the most expensive. Pipelines also from a political and regulatory risk standpoint are very challenging. So the more we can provide bespoke emitter solutions close to the emitter site, which is what we're doing at LSB, that's really important. So proximity matters. I think that also harkening back to our engagement, ensuring that we've got local license to operate from the ground up at the local community level is very, very important. You're seeing issues all across the country, whether it's in Louisiana, whether it's in the Midwest, where some of that community work perhaps hasn't happened, or it's been challenging, and it's really been a forefront issue for Lapis that we want to ensure that we've got strong community support from the get-go. And that's been, I think, a real distinguishing factor for Lapis and the success we've had to date. I think we've really learned to play to our strengths as well operationally. We were founded by former oil and gas offshore folks, and the idea was to bring best-in-class, world-class subsurface as well as international stakeholder experience to the CCS space from oil and gas. And focusing on those strengths and aligning with best-in-class partners, we've been able to offer fulsome solutions tailored to any emitter's project vision. But I think those two elements are very, very important for us.
Yeah, no, definitely. You mentioned permitting and the regulatory costs, a defining challenge for the entire sector, and we hear it every day. Engage with our supporters and partners. How is Lapis navigating uncertainty on the regulatory front, also surface requirements while keeping projects on track? And where do you see the greatest opportunities for both efficiency and clarity on that front?
Well, we've seen a lot of progress in the last year, I think, on the permitting side of things. If you kind of pull the lens back beyond just Lapis, macro-wise, you've got primacy, moving to the states in a number of jurisdictions, Louisiana, now Texas. You've got a lot of states that are now taking this on, and you're going to, I think, see some of that permitting become a little more efficient over time. But I think for us, it's like any stakeholder relationship. Building a relationship with the regulator from the get-go has been very important. Having meaningful dialogue with the regulator, and in our case with LSB, that's been with the Region 16 here in Dallas, ensuring that there's an alignment in terms of the assumptions we're making going into the permitting process, ensuring that there's a sharing of information as much as possible on a real-time basis, so that there's no surprises from the regulator side when the permitting material goes in on a formal basis, or we're responding to requests for additional information. We try to remove some of the formality and have more of an ongoing engagement, and that's been very, very important. But again, I think one of the most important things is in order to help the regulator, we have to ensure that we've got strong stakeholder support from the ground. Our regulator is going to have a difficult time pushing forward on a permitting process if there's clear opposition, from local stakeholders or from the state stakeholders, et cetera. So it's important for us to help us, help them help us, I guess you could say, right? And I think that's been a really important aspect of what we're doing in El Dorado, such that when the public hearing happens, sometime next year, we've done the groundwork, and will be no surprises in terms of what the permitter is going to hear, or what the regulator is going to hear. So it's about engagement, both with the regulator as well as all the stakeholders who are impacted by the project.
Yeah, and that, I mean, you already cover kind of most of the themes on the next question. Looking at that, right? Regional geology, community engagement, landowner partnerships, how important are those? And do you have any specific kind of case studies or models that are proving most effective in practice when we're looking at CO2 networks, the storage hubs, and expanding and scaling those big infrastructure projects?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we first started Lapis, we looked at the landscape, back in 2021, 2022, and you saw some of the big infrastructure projects that were being proposed in the Midwest, the CO2 pipelines. We saw some of the big offshore projects that were being proposed, offshore Louisiana and Texas. Um, Certainly, with respect to the Midwest and the CO2 pipelines, the challenges that they had, it was a bit of a template on what not to do, to be honest with you, right? And we brought some of the approach we had from the international oil and gas side of things in terms of engaging early and often with stakeholders as being the key to unlock that area. And I think the same thing would be, in any state. So in Louisiana, for example, we have a larger project which will ultimately could become more of a hub approach. But again, without engaging with the local stakeholders, with local communities, those hubs will have difficulty getting off the ground. And you're seeing that in Louisiana in terms of some of the political noise. So we have, in-house land and external affairs teams who engage early in the development process. They've been up in the Midwest. They're spending a lot of time in Louisiana, in St. Charles Parish, in Baton Rouge, in El Dorado, really working from the ground up. And not only just land people, but we're bringing in our technical experts as well. So our chief geoscientist, for example, spends a lot of time on the ground, because we want to ensure that when we're talking to stakeholders, we're bringing the right people in to answer the questions in the most credible fashion as well. There's no point going in and having someone who's not equipped to answer technical questions. And in states like Louisiana, Arkansas, a lot of the questions you receive are quite technical. They know the subsurface, they know oil and gas. And so you want to ensure that your first engagement with those folks is credible, and you're bringing scientific people to the equation such that they can answer questions. And the same thing in the Midwest. Our technical people are actually sitting at the kitchen table with landowners, to ensure that they understand from the get-go that we take these issues very, very seriously. And we're trying to, provide credible answers to legitimate questions right from the beginning. And I think how we do that is very important. And I think over time, we move those engagements out from, kitchen tables to small group meetings. For example, now in the Midwest, we're meeting with the town councils, the city councils. We're having, targeted open houses, et cetera. So we began to kind of open up that concentric circle over time in terms of bringing in the broader engagement to a broader set of stakeholders over time. And we think that's a very, very important process. And not only what you're saying, but how you're doing it matters. And in terms of building trust with local communities, you're not always going to get everything right, but you want to ensure that you've built up goodwill and you've built trust. So when you have issues, for example, in terms of road usage or things where people have concerns in terms of surface rights being impacted, they know who to call, and they know that we're gonna answer those questions, and we're gonna deal with them in an effective way, and we're gonna get to the right answer, and not just create barriers with local communities.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I guess looking at Louisiana, Texas, where there has been, a very great oil and gas development, you're looking at very educated stakeholders, which is positive, but they require a more sophisticated approach, as you mentioned. So it's great that you're providing that.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things as well is you've got stakeholders in Texas, Louisiana, even Arkansas, who, like you say, are very familiar with oil and gas. But even though, CCS is a very similar business to oil and gas, it's different in many critical factors as well, much of which are commercial. You have to engage with people and talk about how the royalty rates aren't really the most determining factor. It's going to be about being most competitive area in the region to allow those CO2 volumes to be injected at a commercially economic way. And that's how you're going to make money as a landowner. Really dealing with the technical uncertainty of how CCS works versus oil and gas, and the amount of regulatory certainty we have to develop at the get-go, to file a Class 6 permit versus oil and gas, which is a lot less determinative at time zero, for example. So there's a lot of commonality, but there's a lot of engagement in terms of how things are different as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You started the conversation mentioning biofuels, and you recently became a member of the Renewable Fuels Association, which I think signals a growing interest from biofuels producers in CC. How do you see TCS enabling CI fuels, access to new markets and new revenue streams, and long-term competitiveness for ethanols and SAF producers?
Yeah, I know. I mean, we've definitely made a big commitment into this space, and beyond just the membership in the association. We've brought on some key contributors into the organization. A couple of individuals who were senior executives at Navigator, who were very familiar with the biofuels and the ethanol space. One of whom is based in Minneapolis. The other person is based in Omaha. Actually, they're now our chief commercial officer. They bring, years of relationships and understanding of the biofuels in the ethanol space. And so it's been a very important commitment for our company to make, because we see at the end of the day, for ethanol players, CCS is by far and away the best, most significant way to reduce the carbon intensity of liquid fuels. The biofuels industry has pursued lower CI scores for many years. And now you've got current policies and high purity CO2 from biofuels emitters, which are clear reasons for the rapid decarbonization of ethanol producers. You're seeing, a multitude of Class 6 applications being filed in the Midwest. You're seeing international exports of lower CI ethanol being increased over time. So we think this is a big market, and we think that we bring not only the technical solution, but as I mentioned earlier, the ability to navigate the community side of things in the Midwest as well as anybody else. We also know the ethanol market's also looking at the feasibility of large volumes being used to produce SAF. SAF requires low CI feedstock, and sequestration offers the greatest reduction in CI scores as well. So we think there's a lot of potential, over the next number of years in that space.
Yeah. No, and we are hearing the same, and there's growing interest from the more traditional energy space, energy leaders on SAF and biofuels for sure, and
Yeah.
we'll do all of it at the Carbon Solutions Forum.
And Washington has a big impact on that as well with the 45V, the 45Z. There's a lot going on regulatory wise that we're trying to keep our hands on, because that really opens up the commercial avenues for this business in that space.
Absolutely. So our last question is specifically about the forum. You came on board earlier this year on the second edition as a sponsor, and then you're returning as a key partner for the 2026 edition in February. What makes the Carbon Solutions Forum a valuable platform for your team, for Lapis, and what conversations or collaborations are you most excited to continue at the event?
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to the dialogue. Last year was our first participation in the forum, and actually I wasn't there, but my chief commercial folks officer and his VP of commercial were in attendance, and they came back with rave reviews in terms of the forum and the conversations that they had. And so this year we're upping our participation in the sense that I'll be there myself in person. I think that we found that the forum is featuring companies and individuals who aren't just talking about the future of carbon management, that we're actually shaping it. And that's what we feel makes the forum valuable. Participants are uniquely positioned to turn ideas into action, and they've lived the experience of developing projects. So from my perspective, I'm looking forward to discussing some of the things and I've talked about just this morning in terms of the progress on the permitting and the timelines for bringing projects online across the United States, both from a state regulatory kind of permitting standpoint, but also federal wise. And also the next generation of CCU projects beyond, biofuels, beyond ammonia. There's been so much talk, more broadly around the power requirements for data center demand. You're seeing some progress in terms of natural gas power generation, combined with CCS to achieve that demand for the data centers. We're really looking forward to being part of that dialogue and really understanding where the tangible project is being made. It's easy to talk about that stuff, very difficult to actually see commercial deals being done and economics being created to allow CCS to work with natural gas power generation to basically create net zero power for data centers. So I'm really interested in that dialogue and really, sense checking how real that is at this point in time and where we can contribute to kind of push that dialogue forward.
Yeah, that's a huge part of the conversation, of course. Lucky to have participants from Google, from Microsoft, companies like Constellation driving that on the natural gas side, and also some people from outside of the traditional energy industry like Celanese, cement companies that are also looking into integrating CCS, and of course, companies like Lapis providing the solution. So we are very excited for the conversation in February. Thanks again, Reg, for your time, and we look forward to learning more at the Carbon Solutions Forum, where you can share more progress next February.
Sounds good, Pablo. Appreciate it.